Good afternoon, good morning, and welcome to episode 31 of International Expansion Explained, wherever you are in the world right now. My guest today, who was spontaneous enough to come on at very short notice, is Olivia Plotnick. Thank you for joining me, Olivia.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me and for putting this together so fast.
Now, Olivia is the founder of Wai Social, which is a marketing agency who are working with brands in the Chinese social media marketing space. And also, she's the founder of the platform Women in China Marketing, which showcases the work of women, obviously, in the China marketing space. Besides her massive expertise working with brands in China and delivering workshops to companies who need to learn more about this topic, which is almost every company, Olivia has also delivered a TEDx talk on the power of communication, as well as being quoted in such reputable locations as the Financial Times, Forbes, or Business Insider, just to mention a few. So, thank you. Yes. So, just to start us off, maybe you can give us, for those people who don't really know what Xiaohongshu or Rednote is, maybe you can give us a quick rundown of what the platform is about, because I think that before all of the hype that's been quoted in a lot of major, most people had probably never heard of them.
Yeah, great way to start. So, xiaohongshu or Little Red Book or Red, or as it's now being commonly called, Red Note. Sorry if I slip between the all the different names. Mostly I will use xiaohongshu or Red. But this platform was launched in 2013. It is a Chinese-owned social media platform, and it is typically used for product discovery, lifestyle inspiration. Think of it almost as a place where you would start looking for products or inspiration. So almost like a Google, but it's very visual. So you have a lot of images, videos, text, almost like a blog type situation. And you have different functionalities on it, including e-commerce. You have an audio chat room feature, which is almost kind of akin to Clubhouse, if you remember that from a few years ago. So if I were to try and compare it to different Western social media platforms out there, it would be almost as if you're taking Google, Instagram, Pinterest, Yelp, Amazon, to name a few, even TripAdvisor, because it is does have a lot of travel content on there as well, and you are putting them all into one app. As many Chinese social media apps you might be familiar with are called super apps, and Xiaohongshu or Red is no different. And this app, I think, is particularly unique because of its user base, its demographics. It didn't really have a huge amount of users compared to something like WeChat or Douyin, which is actually the Chinese version of TikTok. Xiaohongshu has about 300 million active users, and most of those users are female. So about 70% of the users are female, 30% male, and they typically tend to be from higher tier cities. So Shanghai, Beijing, Chongqing, cities like this, and they tend to be, a little bit more affluent, well educated, are in the, have white collar jobs, things like this. So that it's a very specific consumer group, a user group. And I think that's going to play into a role to some of the points that we touch upon later as to some of the reactions that these new American users have been having to the platform. Now, on this platform, as I mentioned, it's typically used for product discovery. So there's a lot of information about beauty. You have a lot of content about fashion. You have a lot of content about lifestyle. You have a lot of content about travel inspiration and travel reviews. And so a lot of
Yes.
Chinese use Xiaohongshu really as a way to figure out, where they should go, not only just in China, but all over the world. You'll find users posting about really interesting locations, hotels, restaurant, things like this. So it really is kind of a one-stop shop for, millennial, Gen Z, women, everything around lifestyle, product discovery, things like that. And obviously, we're on here talking about this because of the massive influx of American users to the platform. In the past within the past week, there was, posts that started going viral telling American users because of the TikTok ban to start downloading Rednote, and it was being called Rednote, and said that, this was the Chinese version of TikTok, which a little bit incorrect. There is a Chinese version of TikTok called Douyin, which is, basically the same thing as TikTok. Red is completely different. It's owned by a different company. And it's a completely different platform to TikTok. But now you have, I think I just saw a number reported by Reuters that within 2 days, over 700,000 new users to Rednote. And this really skyrocketed the app to the top app in the App Store in terms of social networking. So it has gained notoriety worldwide, and that has a lot of implications, which we can start to get into.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that 𝙏𝙀 is somewhere that I've gone in the past, partly to immerse myself in a kind of Chinese language experience with something that's very visual, so it helps my very poor language skills. Um, but also somewhere, like you said, for travel inspiration. When I was traveling in China in September as a tourist, then obviously I'm looking for different content than if I'm on a business trip, or if I'm researching on brands for clients for competition, or to see what brands have done in the past in China. Then that is one of the best places to start, because there's such a wide range of clients. But suddenly my feed is like full of, I'm a TikTok
Yeah.
refugee, but not just in English. There's also a lot of German speaking posts suddenly popping up, and I'm assuming that's because I've got an Austrian phone number. But it's really quite crazy. But up until now, it seems to be like this very it's a very strange atmosphere on there right now, because there's this kind of very respectful exchange of just, let's say, regular people who have nothing to do with each other, like from a cultural or educational perspective, exchanging ideas about what is it like to do this in Germany, or what is it like to do this in China. And yeah, it feels very, very odd.
Yeah, I think it's an
I can't
an
explain.
an
Yeah,
unprecedented cultural exchange that we've never seen before. Since around 2010, you had most of the Western social media platforms uh, cut off, or not banned, but they just they couldn't comply, or they chose not to comply with Chinese internet regulations, and so therefore they couldn't operate within the country, and so they exited. And since then you have really not had any platform which has a number of Chinese internet users or netizens and American internet users interacting with each other. And so this is the first, really the first time that this has happened. So you almost have like the first time, two cultures are meeting and blending with each other. And so I think until this point, there have been a lot of really, I think really touching and really interesting and really hilarious cultural exchanges, which have been great to see. Unfortunately, this is the internet. Um, and you hate to see it, but I do see more and more rising of uh, animosity. So this is like what, day 3, day 4. Unfortunately,
yeah,
I don't think things are going to stay as
yeah.
rosy and touching for very long. It was nice while it lasted. There were some cute moments and great memes. I think one of the funny things is Xiaohongshu users, Chinese users were demanding in a cute and funny way that new American users paid the cat
The
tax
cat
when
tax,
they
yeah.
first came on, so that they had to post a photo of their cat to verify that you're like a real authentic user. So there's a lot of funny um, exchanges like that. But unfortunately, as things continue to unfold, I think the atmosphere is starting to become a little bit more negative. Um, you know, I think the Xiaohongshu, it was, it's almost like a saltwater fish tank where you need
A
to
bubble.
the levels of everything are perfectly balanced, obviously not perfectly balanced. I'm not saying that xiaohongshu is without controversy and bullying and fights, but then you just like dump all these freshwater fish into the platform and the balance is completely thrown off. So things are quite shaken up right now, unfortunately. I don't necessarily see this ending well in any, retrospect. The As it is now will not continue. I think Xiaohongshu, they were so overwhelmed initially by this huge influx of new users. So not only were they getting an insane amount of new accounts opened, but they were getting a lot of English language content, which this app was not, built for English language content. So they don't have systems set in place to really moderate English
Moderate.
language contents
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
volumes that they needed to do. Now they are trying to get a hold of that and get ahead of it. So you are seeing more posts starting to get taken down or not even be allowed to post in the first place. And, this is not really going to jive with the American users who obviously in a huge, cloud of irony came over to this app because they're mad at the US government for censoring their free speech.
Mhm.
And they're going to find that they're not really able to have the free speech that they want to on this platform either. So I hope that this ends in the least messy way where just people just start to stop using the
Push
platform
off.
and there's not too
Yeah.
much that breaks out, or too much chaos that starts to happen. um Obviously it could get a lot messier. Let's hope not. But as it is now is not going to continue. And so I think it's really important for people and for brands to remember, like, this is not going to be the new TikTok. This is not going to be the new platform that you reach American consumers on. You do not need an English language red note strategy. I do think that there are really interesting ways that you could start to use that you could take advantage of this phenomenon. I would say that if you are a brand and you haven't ever had the chance to be exposed to Chinese consumers, take a look at the platform, see what's happening right now. Like, look at popular content, look at comments, because there are Chinese users who are watching videos from American, or Western users, and they're asking them for product links, for like the hoodie or the water bottle in the background. So potentially, your product or maybe your category of product could start to become really, really popular. And you realize, oh, there's a market in China for it. Brands spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, you know, paying for this type of
Right? To get
information.
this kind of exposure. Yeah.
Yeah, paying for this information when here's a chance to potentially get it for free. So I would, take this opportunity in that way. The other, opportunity I think is for creators or celebrities who have now created accounts and who have realized that Chinese users really love them, that they have a huge potential in China. And if you're willing to comply with Chinese internet regulations, really starting to build up your account and then, being able to have a huge fan base in China, which could be a potentially, very great way to monetize any business. So those are really kind of the two biggest things that I would say are opportunities right now. And, not for brands to like start targeting American users on Xiaohongshu. That's just not a realistic strategy.
No, I don't think so. And I think that it's also, like you said, it's quite ironic and feels very, very strange that people are kind of leaping the Great Firewall in that direction rather than
Which I think
trying to get hold of a VPN
for the
to get
Chinese
out.
government must have
Um,
been like the last thing that they ever expected was people coming the other way. They, have put so much effort into protecting and, making this an insular thing. I think never in their wildest dreams did they imagine like a flood the other way happening. So it's probably a very bizarre, situation over there right now.
yeah, and I mean, I guess the question is more whether it will have that kind of clubhouse type effect that rocketed to the top of the charts and was this and just kind of burnt itself
Yeah.
out in terms of momentum and in terms of interest, or whether from the tech side, firstly, I'm sure that the government will be breathing at Xiaohongshu to get them to have their
Yeah.
moderation under control because they're not going to want to have all kinds of content out there. I mean, I've seen some content on there already that, whilst it was, how should I say, it was well-meaning. It wasn't done in an aggressive or nasty
Right.
way, but just things that Americans see to be very, very normal, opposed to talking about their guns and stuff. And it's just like, and I could see those curling of all of the Chinese people who were commenting on it because for them it was just
Yeah.
perpetuating.
Oops, I think your audio for me it's on mute. For me, I can't hear it. I don't know if it's just me. No. I don't know if anyone watching can hear her audio or it's just me who can't hear the audio.
Do you hear me again?
Oh, yes, now I hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Not quite sure what happened
No
there.
worries.
But yeah, I'm not quite sure whether people, but also I'm sure that it's a lot of pressure for the team in the back end of Xiaohongshu to really get their moderation looked at so that they know that if stuff is going through, that they know at least that they are not going to be held accountable for something that
Yeah. I mean, I think
of refugees.
they know that they could, they could be shut down. I think that's probably a huge concern. I think probably like a secondary concern under that is also protecting their Chinese user base because, at first it was funny and hilarious,
Yeah,
but now you have, Chinese users who are opening the app and it's being like polluted basically with
exposed.
all of this TikTok content and it's become something completely else when it was, the app itself is a great app. It's used for a very particular purpose. And so I would be really nervous that my user base starts to fall off. I would be worried about protecting them. So, how can they kind of curb the traffic to make sure that Chinese users go back to, seeing the posts that they would normally see and protecting, kind of the cultural identity of the app to make sure that they don't lose that user base because they are, they have been putting in a lot of resources and effort to make the app profitable. They do plan to IPO in Hong Kong soon. Which is another reason why I can't really imagine them investing in doing an English language app or trying to accommodate a lot of American or Western users, is that's just it doesn't seem to align with their current roadmap at all, and especially you know it seems like a terrible investment as well, because lawmakers, just today came out, because it's gotten so much popularity, so they had to comment on it. Lawmakers came out and said that, yeah, they would ban Xiaohongshu as well,
Yep.
from the app store. So it doesn't make sense for them to try and keep these users on the platform. I think right now their focus is not getting shut down by the government, and protecting their original user base.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Do you think that there are, for brands who are already active in or using Xiaohongshu as a social marketing, do you think that for, let's say, a kind of watershed moment, that they have to also think very hard about how their Chinese marketing is lining up with their international marketing? Because I mean, traditionally, marketing from beasts, and the rest, I mean, of course, the principles are the same, but the details of marketing in China have been very different to the kind of global campaigns that many brands use. And a lot of the visuals and everything are really quite different, even if the tonality is the same.
Yeah. I don't think that any brand runs the risk. Like, I don't, I think, of course, campaigns are going to be different in different markets. I don't think it's going to like rub users the wrong way. And again, I think, um, the influx of American users on there, they're more seeing content from other users. They're not really going into brand accounts. Obviously, there have been several brands who have done a great job at capturing the virality. You have Duolingo, who has, done a
Yes.
great job of making a splash on there. I think, perfect instance for that one. But I wouldn't necessarily be concerned about that aspect. I think what brands who are already, who have been on the platform for a long time, and who are using that to reach their Chinese consumers, and are wondering, like, now, do we need to also, post something in English to acknowledge, everybody there? No, I would be really cautious about that as well, because I think that Chinese users might be very quick to just say, like, oh, you're just, jumping on this trend to catch traffic. You had and, I saw Luckin Coffee, which
Yes.
is a Chinese brand, domestic Chinese brand, and they, made a post in English, because ironically they are planning to open up offline stores in the US in 2025. So they, made a post in English like, "Hi, all my American friends, we're Luckin Coffee. Here's a little promotional deal." And they received, they got hundreds of comments on the post, but when you actually go through the comments, none of them were from English speaking users. It was all
No,
just Chinese, basically taking the piss out of
fanning
them and
flames.
making fun of them. Yeah, like for trying to capitalize. So I think you need to be really careful in this moment. And there's a lot going on the platform. I would even, like, if you're planning to launch a huge campaign right now, which also kind of puts brands in a really awkward position, because Chinese New Year is coming
Yeah.
up, and the traffic and the situation on probably what is one of the most pivotal platforms for a lot of B2C brands, everything is getting thrown out of whack, as we talked about. And so it's a really weird time. Approach it very carefully. And, I think right now, over the next few days, waiting for kind of the dust to settle, because I think things are going to get potentially a lot more spicy on there. Like, it's been, kind of nice, as we talked about earlier, like kind of nice and cute up until now, but things are starting to get riled up a little bit. So, holding off and waiting to see how things go, especially because, like, the, most basically important time in the Chinese calendar is coming up. So definitely time to take a beat and watch how things unfold.
Yeah, I think it's a really hard line to, or a really difficult line to walk for any kind of brand right now. And I mean, there must be some really stressed
Yeah.
marketing managers out there for companies who are looking to launch, and they're just suddenly like, oh, we've got a CNY campaign that needs to go out,
Right.
but uh, oh,
Yeah.
that has to be, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Do you
social
think that
media.
they Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, I think at the moment it doesn't look like the brands will split, but because I can't see the point of them doing a kind of Douyin TikTok
No,
type of
that
solution.
seems that, I can
But
imagine that that is a huge investment, uh, hiring a team, building out, like, I don't think that that is,
does
something
it?
easily done. And yeah, like we discussed, it doesn't make sense. The government has already said that they would ban it. And, this is happening in the US. Um, I don't like to say that the US has so much influence, but I do think it has an impact on other markets. If the US does go ahead and enforce a total ban on TikTok, I think it would other markets may more seriously consider it. So it's really an uphill battle for Chinese tech platforms abroad. And it would be a wild seeming time to then invest in creating a platform for Western users. So the timing of it just doesn't make sense for them.
Yeah, I can't imagine that it would be, yeah, a worthwhile investment for them to be making right now, especially when they've already got their hands full simply managing
Yeah,
the present rather chaotic situation, if we're honest about it. I mean,
yeah,
I'm sure that it's a bit like drinking from a hose pipe, isn't
yeah,
it? That they're like drinking from a fire hose kind
yeah.
of situation of stuff just pouring in.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. I will like there have been some really again, to go back to kind of some interesting observations. I think it is really interesting for Western uh users to experience kind of the super app nature of the platform. I also think it's been interesting to see users discover a lot of Chinese brands and products. So there's a video I saw from an American woman who had, discovered one of the electric car, like one of the EV car brands, and she was like, "Wow, this
mhm.
is so cool! Like it comes in pink. It's only $15,000. Like this is awesome." And so just to see that happening, interesting opportunity. Um, oops, I think interesting opportunity for Chinese brands to think about going global. So yeah, that could be kind of potentially positive.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the Chinese brands, for them, I would see it as more of an opportunity for them to do some market research, as it were. But I guess they also have to accept that they're looking at a very specific
Yeah,
demographic of Americans who are actually on there, because when you look at it, it's not. I mean, even the posts that I've been trying not to click on posts
yeah,
in a way, because I just don't want to
I
feed the
know.
algorithm with me being 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 fed with all of this stuff. But, um, when you look at the posts, in the same way that TikTok is not a true reflection of society and YouTube is not a true reflection of
Yeah,
society, it is a reflection of those parts of society who feel that that is their only opportunity to express themselves in public and to be very, very vocal about
yeah,
it. So you see a much higher percentage of certain kind of opinions being presented than is actually true in the general population, I think, of any market and any platform. I think that's
right,
always the
right.
case.
Yeah, yeah. It's easy to get caught up in kind of a bubble, especially online. So yeah, I think understanding that and evaluating that as a Chinese brand for sure.
Yeah. Although it's certainly interesting to see and to see if you can get some feedback onto some of your
Yeah.
products. That's has to be such an exciting opportunity that you maybe wouldn't have had
Yeah,
otherwise.
exactly.
Okay, I mean, we're going to have to start wrapping up a little bit now, but I just wanted to go back to a question that Yvette asked at the beginning, where she mentioned that her brand name is being used by somebody else, and so she's using the brand name 𝙏𝙀𝘿𝘭 because hers has been kind of taken
Yeah.
hostage by somebody else. Are there steps that you can take on Xiaohongshu, or is this a mark lawyer and jump through all the hoops type?
It it depends if the person who is it first, it depends if you have all of the legal paperwork, and depending on the category and the industry that your brand is in, you might need specific paperwork that you could only get if you have a legally registered entity in China. So it does get pretty tricky. But in order to take your brand name back, you'd have to present your trademark documentation. Now, there have
In
been
China.
very
In
famous
China.
brands and cases of this, yeah, in China taking years and years and years, and hundreds of thousands of dollars to resolve.
Yep.
So it just depends on like what are the links that the user has gone to that's currently using your brand name to secure that, because they potentially could have paperwork, or they could have trademarked something close enough to your brand name, and then that would mean that you're not able to trademark it. So it becomes very, very complicated, but the first step is to definitely reach out to a trademark lawyer. I'm sure that you know some. I have connections as
Yeah.
well, so feel free to reach out to any of us. But yeah, the sooner that you check, the better. But it can be a very tricky situation.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure, Yvette, that you've got your trademark actually registered in China and not just a general um, outside of China trademark registration. So I think that that's like the foundation of it, and to take it from there. But you probably would really need to speak to a specific trademark specialist in order to really
Yeah,
make progress, or in order to know what you might need to do and to see whether you might just need to approach that company who's using yours, which has worked for me in the past, approach them and see if they're willing to negotiate on it, depending on whether their
yeah,
products are actually very close to yours. There's so many factors, it's hard to just give you a quick answer, but if they're using your name but on completely different kind of products, then they might be willing to talk. Who knows? But
yeah,
I had problems in the past all the time when I was working with HIP, because with infant formula there were all kinds of stuff on the
right.
Chinese names of companies, especially. It can be really tricky, and it can get
Yeah,
expensive really fast.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Now, I think I don't actually have any other burning questions, because I'm just looking and I'm very conscious that you have a hard stop coming up. So
Yeah.
maybe you would just like to give us a quick rundown of what services that Why Social offers and who should approach you if they're looking to enter into the Chinese market or work with you.
Yeah, so we're a boutique social media marketing agency and consultancy based out of Shanghai. And we typically work mostly with B2C brands, and anything from, if you aren't sure about what platforms that you need to be on, we can help you craft your strategy. Or if you are at the point where you're ready to have your accounts, up and running and managed in China, we can help you with the content creation, with posting, KOLs, everything like that. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or my email is just Olivia at Wai Social. That's WAI social.com. And we can have a conversation there.
Thank you very much. And I will make sure that all of those links are also under the YouTube recording of this
Cool.
discussion so that anybody who wants to reach out at a later point in time who hasn't seen this live can also easily get in
Yeah.
touch with you if they
And
need
we
to.
also we have a Substack. If you're also just looking for more information and advice about different, products or brands in China, we do have a Substack. We send out a newsletter usually bi-weekly, and we have a ton of information about different categories and how they can use social media platforms, about current consumer trends, about really great case studies. So definitely go and check that out as a resource, or as a kind of a first touch point.
Yeah, I love your Substack. It has such great case studies. I've used a couple of them with my university students in the past.
Right.
So, yeah, thank you very much.
Cool.
So, I think we are really at the limit of our time today. Thank you so much for coming
Yes.
on and being able to address so clearly all of this kind of rapidly developing situation. And yeah, it's been very nice to chat. And thank you for sharing your
Well, thank you
expertise
so
today.
much, Catherine, for organizing, and thanks for everybody for watching and attending. It was great. Hope to speak to you guys soon.